What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Lost and Found Dating channel. If this is your first time, welcome to our channel, welcome to our space. We hope that you enjoy your time here. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be the first to know when we come out with new content each and every week. Here on this channel, we talk about three things. We talk about dating, we talk about life, and we talk about dating life. You feel me? In that order. So, without further ado, let's dive in to this week's topic. So in this week's video, we're going to be talking about how to remove yourself from an unhealthy relationship, how to remove yourself or gain traction to begin moving yourself out of an unhealthy relationship by using empathy. And as I've talked about before, when I say unhealthy relationship, it could be a dating relationship, it could be with a dating partner, it could be an unhealthy relationship that you have with a friend or with a family member, right? So we're going to be talking about using empathy to remove yourself from that unhealthy relationship. And if you take that statement at face value, right, a lot of you may be thinking, okay, well, I have somewhat of a grasp of what empathy means, but if I'm dealing with someone who is abusive, right, someone who's an emotional bully, why in the world would I be using empathy when dealing with that person, right? They've been treating me with a total lack of empathy, so why would I start to treat them with empathy to gain traction and remove myself from that relationship, or maybe even work towards making a healthier relationship, right? It seems a little bit counterintuitive, but let me explain. What I actually mean is applying empathy in its most purest form, right? And this is something that I actually learned through watching Richard Grandin's channel, and you've heard me mention him before on this channel, and this is something that I learned from him. When we talk about the word empathy, when we talk about what empathy means, a lot of times what we are talking about isn't actually empathy, right? Empathy in its most purest form doesn't really have a moral component to it, right? And what do I mean when I say empathy doesn't have a moral component or a moral leaning to it? So allow me to explain by using an example, right? So let's say you're a detective and you show up at a crime scene. Let's say you show up and there's been a bank robbery, and you see the vault that's been cracked open, and the money has been removed, and all the bank tellers and the employees, they're shaken up and they're scared and they're afraid, and there's all this commotion, right? As a detective, you're trying to solve this case. You're trying to figure out who did the crime, where their next move is, whether they may try and commit the same crime again at another bank, maybe a couple cities down, right? In order to do those things, you can't approach the crime and think about the crime scene as a law-abiding, sort of egalitarian, fair, virtuous citizen, and approach the crime and think, okay, what would I do as this righteous egalitarian person, right? What you have to do in order to solve a crime, if you're a detective, you have to think the way someone who is cunning, right? The way someone who is sinister, the way someone who has bad intentions, the way someone who has a criminal mindset, you have to think and approach the situation the way in which they would, right? In other words, you have to tap into that more conniving, more criminal, less law-abiding mindset in order to try to figure out what they did and how they did it and how to combat, their next robbery attempt, right? That, in essence, is what empathy in its purest form is, right? It doesn't mean, when we talk about empathy, we tend to moralize it and we think of it as having sympathy for someone or being able to relate to them and maybe offer them compassion or offer them kindness. But empathy in its truest form really just means seeing the situation, seeing this scenario from another individual or another person's eyes, as opposed to seeing this scenario from your eyes, right? So with the approach that I just gave, even though you're a detective, let's say you're a law-abiding citizen, you have to put that mind state to the side for a second in order to tackle this task of solving this crime and catching the criminals. So, in other words, empathy isn't fundamentally good or fundamentally bad, right? You can use empathy to offer someone compassion and to maybe help them cope through a negative situation, or you can use empathy in certain situations to achieve a more conniving, more sinister goal that you're looking to achieve, right? A more sinister, more negative purpose that you're trying to complete. And I actually think one of the fundamental challenges that someone who is naive or maybe even someone who is a people pleaser struggles with is they have an inability to empathize with those who are more opportunistic, right? They have an inability to empathize with those people who have abusive tendencies, right? Who have criminal tendencies, right? Who have bad intentions, right? They are confined to this map of the world based on their own mindset, right? And their own values, right? If I don't think that I would be capable of committing this crime or that I would be capable of doing this bad thing, it prevents me from being able to wrap my head around the idea that someone else is capable of it, right? So if my idea, if my reality of the spectrum of good and bad, right? If my reality of how bad someone can be or how bad a person can be is limited based on my capacity to hurt someone or to achieve negative aims, that in some ways makes me more susceptible to those kinds of people, right? Does that kind of make sense? If I'm limited and I think the worst thing that can happen to me is only that which I am capable of doing, that limits me, right? If I'm not someone who goes out to exploit and manipulate people, just because that may be true for me, it doesn't mean that I want to take that frame of reality and apply that to the external world, right? And you can see how within that framework, it's kind of this juxtaposition where the more righteous, the more kind, the more compassionate of a person you are, the more susceptible it makes you to someone who has bad intentions, right? The more susceptible it makes you to someone who wants to abuse and exploit or who will use those means in order to achieve their goals. So, back to my original point, where does the empathy come into play, right, in the context of an abusive relationship? You, as the target of the abuse in this situation, you have to be able to, or I shouldn't say you have to, it can behoove you sometimes to be able to empathize, again, not with this moralistic empathize way, but to empathize with the other person and see yourself through their eyes, right? See yourself and see what it is that they need to have access to, or what it is that they need to be able to control or need to be able to manipulate in order to kind of hold this power over you, right? And that's empathy, like we just described, right? It's seeing you not as yourself, but seeing you as the target of the abuse or the target of the mistreatment, right? Seeing yourself through their eyes and tapping into or being able to access maybe a more sinister, more conniving mindset, attitude, and look and say, okay, what is it that they are using? What are they exploiting? What feature about this dynamic in this relationship are they getting access to and manipulating in order to create this unhealthy dynamic? So it's a matter of understanding what is the life source, right? What is the fuel that keeps this system, right? Because it is a system, right? It's two people integrated with each other, right? Figuring out what is that system running on, what is the fuel, what is the blood that keeps the tissue of that system alive and healthy, right? What is that thing that is keeping this intact? It's about understanding that, yes, this person has abusive tendencies. Yes, maybe in my mind, I've ascribed and assigned a certain level of power and a certain level of authority to them. But in reality, if I can reframe the situation, if I can look at it differently, there's something in me that they are dependent upon, right? There's something about me or something about my behavior or something about my reaction or my response to them that they depend on in order to maintain that unhealthy relationship. So I want you to, as you are empathizing, take a step back and ask yourself, what is that something, right? What is it that they need in order to maintain this hierarchy, right? Maintain this unhealthy relationship? Is that something fear, right? Do they need me to be afraid of them? Is that something guilt? Is that something shame, right? Do they need me to be in this mode of shame and guilt and to feel bad about something that I've done to them, or feel bad about something that they made me think that I did to them, right? Is that what the relationship is dependent upon? Is it validation, right? Is it attention? Is it, are they relying on this response from me to come to their rescue and feel like I need to resolve all of their problems and feel like this need to make them happy, right? Is that what's keeping things intact? Is the idea that I need them, right? Maybe they are relying on this idea among me that I need them, that I depend on them in order to get by in life, right? Maybe that's what sort of props up this unhealthy relationship and keeps it intact, right? You have to take a step back again and empathize, see yourself, see your own behavior, not through your eyes, but through their eyes, right? Kind of look at the prey as the predator, see yourself through their eyes and see, okay, how am I responding? What am I doing that's enabling them and that's giving them this source of power? And in my own unhealthy relationship, once I figured out what this person's needs were, once I figured out what they thrived upon, from that day, it just became very easy to kind of use the same tactics that they did to try to get myself out of the situation, right? It became very easy to kind of wield the power that they had been wielding and to use, essentially their same tactics against me in order to get myself out of that relationship, right? So in the context of my relationship, what it thrived on was guilt, right? Getting me to feel guilty about something I did, or making me feel like I did something that was worthy of me feeling guilt. Once I understood that and once I grasped that, it was very easy, right? I went into the power plant. I went into the breaker room. I found the guilt switch and I shut it off, and I went, okay, this is what's needed, right? This is what's keeping all these lights and all the generators and everything functioning. All right, I'm just gonna flip this switch off and let's see what happens. And when I did it, I saw it was a breakthrough, right? I saw the unhealthy relationship or that unhealthy dynamic start to crumble, and I saw just how much and how dependent me feeling guilty and me feeling that negative guilt and that negative shame, I saw just how dependent this person who I saw as this, omnipotent, sort of all-knowing, all-seeing, all-powerful being, I saw just how sort of cheap and petty and unimpressive, her tactics were at that time. So, as I said, it's about being able to understand the triggers and the things that you have been doing to kind of enable them, whatever your behaviors are that are giving them that source of power. It's about being able to empathize and seeing yourself through their eyes and seeing how you behave, right? Seeing where you kind of leave the holes in your boundaries that they are then able to kind of penetrate and inflict that harm and that abuse through. So, hope you, ladies and gentlemen, got some good nuggets from this video. Hope that gave some good perspective as far as how you can use empathy to help empower yourself and start to remove yourself from some of those unhealthy relationships. Hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, click that thumbs up, leave a comment down below, share your thoughts and feedback. We'd love to hear it. And of course, subscribe to the Lost and Found Dating channel. That way you'll be the very first to know when we come out with new content each and every week, dropping that fire, dropping those gems, dropping that bronze, silver, golden, platinum, titanium nuggets each and every day. So thanks for tuning in, folks. Double salute. We gotta wipe it down. Wipe me down. And I will catch you all next time. Peace.